Our guest of honor tonight, Chairman of the New York State Republican Party, Mr. Ed Cox.
Thank you for that great introduction. You know, you read it just the way my mother wrote it. And you know, she would have loved it, and my father would not have believed it. So, you know, one of the problems of following all these great candidates and great speakers is they stole all my lines. I feel like I could just sit down and, Catherine, I want to thank you for what you do and the passion with which you do it. It is important for us. Thank you. Thank you very much. And Bernadette, thank you for this pin. It's a very special pin because this is a very special club. You know, it is the oldest, but there are a lot of old clubs, and they are old. I have to say, though, this is one of the most active clubs in New York State. And it is one of the most diverse clubs in New York State. So when a Crain's reporter said that Republicans were anti-immigrant, Phil, I heard you organized a little team, and you, from people here, you put together a letter to Crain's.
To Crain's New York business.
That's what Republicans said. We have to fight back, and they apologized, didn't they?
Yes, and they're coming to the Lincoln dinner. Glenn Coleman.
How about that? You know, that's what you got to do. We have to, here in New York City, we have to fight back whenever we're mischaracterized as what we're for. It's a tough road to hoe here in New York City. But let me tell you, in New York State, the Republican Party is back. Yeah. It's back. We now have a majority in the state Senate in Albany. A majority, a Republican majority. And Senator Jack Martins is now in the majority.
Yes.
Thank you. And that means that we can get some things, good things done in Albany for the people of New York State. Now, that's the good news. The bad news is we could have picked up another Senate seat. We all know that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah? Michael, when you got 47% in against Adabo, we could have won that seat, couldn't we?
Yep.
You know what we need to win it? We need unity in the party in Queens County. That's all we need. And then we can win. And with respect to the national stage, well, we picked up more than any other state. We picked up 3 more congressional seats here in New York State. 3 more. And as Frank Secor mentioned, Elise Stefanik, the youngest woman ever elected to the United States House of Representatives. Lee Zeldin. Yeah. And you know, those are party victories, where you have strong parties, and the party, I can feel it building up out in Long Island. What Jesse Garcia is doing with the town of Brookhaven. It's no longer Crookhaven, it is now Brookhaven again. There's a great Republican Party, and it's back. And when there was another candidate there in the primaries, but all the Republican parties were supporting Lee Zeldin. They knew he'd be the best candidate. He was outspent in this primary, 4 to 1. And the poll showed him even on primary day. But when it came down to it, the party turned out the vote, and Lee won with more than 60% in that primary. The best candidate won because of the strong party, and it went to work for him. And that's why we had the best candidate, and that's why we beat a 6-term sitting Democratic Congressman, Tim Bishop. That was the reason. It was a party victory. And you know, the same thing happened up in the North Country with Elise Stefanik. She faced a well-heeled candidate who had actually run twice before, was no one. Actually wasn't a bad guy. It's just she was a better candidate. The party up there decided she was the best candidate. They went to work for her. Again, the polls going into primary day showed it even. But the party turned out the vote, and the best candidate won the primary and went on to win that election in the North Country. Youngest woman ever elected to the House of Representatives. Yeah, that's right. That's the importance of a strong party. And now, what does it mean? We have nine seats now in New York State in the House of Representatives. 9 seats. That's a huge delegation. And John Boehner appreciates it. He works hard. He campaigned all over the state. I campaigned with him. And he said, look, 17 seats, which is what he had going into the election, were not enough for him to keep his conference together and to produce the good legislation that was needed by this country. And he needed additional seats. He said, I need additional 10 to 15 seats. Well, let me tell you, we contributed 3 seats. He's won 14 more seats. It's now a 33-seat majority. Let me tell you, the House of Representatives is going to produce some very good Republican legislation. And that legislation, I ran into a number of members of Congress, Congressman Langerford from Oklahoma, of course, Congressman Cassidy, who come Saturday is going to be the next senator from Louisiana. And Cory Gardner, another congressman from Colorado, who is now the senator-elect from Colorado. And all these members of Congress, they have told me, and they come through New York, of course, this is where the money is, so you get to see them, get to support them, get to talk to them. And they're determined that that good legislation that they worked on when they were members of the House, and now they're going to be members of the Senate, they're going to make sure that that legislation is properly done in the House, so it translates well to the Senate. And when it goes to the Senate, it's going to be going to a Republican majority of 54 seats in the United States Senate. And Harry Reid will no longer be the majority leader. And so they're going to take that legislation coming from the House and they're going to work it over a bit, add something to it, go to a conference committee run by Republicans from both houses. And it'll be good legislation, my friends. A lot of good legislation, all the areas where the country needs it. And then it goes on to the president. He won't know what to do with it. You know, I have to say, if it were, let's give some Democrats their due, if it was President Clinton, he would know what to do with it. You know, he would know how to compromise. Maybe a veto with a wink and a nod, and it'll come back in another form, so he takes care of his conference, his constituency, triangulate, whatever it takes. You got to give him credit. Budget surpluses, NAFTA, welfare reform, he and Gingrich working together, got something done. This president can't do this. The problems and the roadblocks in Washington, it's not the House of Representatives, it is President Obama that is the roadblock in getting good legislation done. So, tremendous opportunity for us. And with that, him not being able to handle this legislation, that gives us a platform on which we can run against the nominee of the Democratic Party for the presidency in 2016. That platform's going to be a strong platform. I'm convinced, not just me, but Haley Barbour and others, people's opinion I respect, the Democratic Party at the national level is going hard left. Hard left into the wilderness. They're going to have to face us with this good legislation saying this is what we have to pass. We're going to win the presidency in a landslide in 2016, my brothers. And then we're going to get some good things done for this country. But, you know, we have to think about back home here in 2017. Because we have a little race coming up for the mayoralty of New York City in 2017. And if you take, I have to tell you, for the party here, we want to have unity. We need unity in our parties in New York City because we have to defeat the mayor of New York City. Mayor de Blasio has to be beaten, and he'll be beaten by a candidate on the Republican ticket. For 20 years, the mayor has been elected on the Republican ticket here in New York City. Mayor Giuliani, what he did with respect to bringing the welfare rolls down from over 1 million to under 500,000. What he did to bring crime down by the high levels where it was down to the levels where it is now. And Bloomberg continued to work on that, follow those same policies. And you got to give him credit for what he tried to do with respect to education, charter schools, and other things that he did. We need to have a Republican back as mayor of New York City. And if we follow the policies that Mayor de Blasio is putting in place, is going to take us back to the era of crime and grime and budget deficits that really destroyed our city. Those of you who lived back then, you know what I'm saying. We cannot have that happen again to this city, the greatest city in the world, the capital city, as the Pope called it. We need to have a Republican mayor, and by golly, if we have a united party, we will be able to do that. We need to build over the next year. The next year is a year of local elections all around the state. We don't have them here in New York City. But it's the year when we're going to build the Republican Party and the foundations of it here in New York City and all across the state. That's what we need to do to have victory in our local elections this year, but also in the mayoralty election that comes up after the presidential election. And in the end, the most important thing is the principles that we hold dear, that are important to us, the principles of the Republican Party. And that's freedom and opportunity and limited government and local control, security, both good national defense and local security in our cities and in our towns, and also the rule of law. Those are the principles that we have to stand for as a party, and to elect good representatives who are going to put those principles into good legislation, so that we can, in the State House in Albany and in Washington, have the government that we deserve. That's what we Republicans are about. Thank you very much for all the good work that you do here in Kingsville. I'm Ray Knuckles. Thank you, and happy holidays to you all.